them outside, while at the same time exposing them outside in the context of Krishna consciousness by keeping them protected, we can raise them as very strong devotees. And I'll read you this quote by Srila Prabhupada, which is so wonderful and kind of sums up Prabhupada's desire for our children, for the future of our children. You know, for Prabhupada, there were three things that were very important. And one was book distribution. We all are quite aware of that. You know, Prabhupada's stressing, mass publishing books, and there's some amazing stories about that. Deity worship, how he established so many centers and installed deities. And the third is Gurukula. That was very top on the Prabhupada's list, actually. So, and the reason is because he wanted a whole generation that's coming up of children who are really well trained as Vaishnavas. Prabhupada said that his direct words were that if we are able to make a whole generation of our children into fine Krishna conscious preachers, that will be the glory of our movement and the glory of your country as well. But if we neglect somehow or other, and if we lose even one Vaishnava, that's a very great loss. So you can see that how dear this Gurukula was for Prabhupada. And the reason is because he wanted to raise children, not only who are academically accomplished, but also who have good character. What was the reason of sending the children to Gurukula? Even 50 years ago, influential people in India, you may have heard, they sent their children to Gurukula. And now these people, they had everything going for them. They had money, they had position. They didn't need to send their children. They could keep their children at home because they had everything. But why did they consider that important? It's because they understood the importance of teaching good character. And we see that in Shastra, right? Krishna himself went to a Gurukula. All the Pandavas and just about anybody, they were trained in a Gurukula. And the reason is because Prabhupada stressed on good character. Now, for many of us, Gurukula is not an option. We understand that. So what do? How do we keep Prabhupada's instructions at heart? Please, Srila Prabhupada. Because Prabhupada, in his course, he's given tremendous information and guidance on how to raise children. So if we keep those, if we understand what those instructions are and try to keep it within the framework of raising them at home or in a devotee school, or whichever options are, Gurukula, whatever options are, then we will naturally have peace, Srila Prabhupada. And why was this program so dear to Srila Prabhupada? It's because he said that these children are not ordinary. These children who are born from devotee families, we understand that they've actually done so much of devotional life in their past life. And they're just here to finish it off. They could not complete it. And now they're taking birth in our families just so we can help them through this process and ending this material life, birth, in other words. Because see, even we, all of us who grew up in India or elsewhere, but we were raised with some Vedic culture, right? Something, we can say, because India was the heart of the Vedic culture. But none of us can say that we grew up hearing and chanting. Maybe some from our grandparents, but not the way Prabhupada has given us. Our children, from day one, they're given this opportunity. So naturally, these children are very special. And taking shelter of Srila Prabhupada's instructions is really the key to keeping this Vedic culture. As you know, in India, everything is so fast disappearing, isn't it? Just maybe a shadow of Vedic culture is left. But in this shadow also is so very important to preserve and keep. And Prabhupada said, ISKCON is the future hope, right? And ISKCON can only be the future hope if we train our next generation into wonderful devotees. And Prabhupada said that such children who are trained well, they're not only good for a movement, but the glory of the country as well. In other words, he's saying that they can be very ideal citizens and also good leaders. It's not like devotees cannot become good leaders and give that good leadership, give good role models. So this is Prabhupada's vision. Prabhupada was, he knew that just simply academic education is not going to create good gentlemen. Because we have in a society, we are full with them. We have people who have a lot of money, at least in America where I live. There's so much money and so much opportunity. But does that mean that people have good character? Obviously not. But Vedic education is different. Why? Because it teaches our children good qualities such as self-control, tolerance, mercy, compassion, all these good qualities. What was Chanakya Pandit's good formula for ideal education? Is when we learn and teach our children how to treat all women as mothers, others' property as garbage, just dirt. It doesn't belong to me. And treat others the way we would like to be treated ourselves. Prabhupada said that just simply to go to school, to learn how to eat better, sleep better, and mate better, this is not education. He said, actually, you don't need training for that. It's innate in us. Even a small baby, you give a little cookie or something, he knows exactly where to put it, straight into the mouth, right? He doesn't put it in the ear or anywhere. He knows where to put it. So nobody needs training for that. Sleeping, nobody needs training. It's just all natural. But what we need training is how to control these activities so that we can focus more on the real goal of life. And another thing that Prabhupada was stressing was how the teachers must be very ideal. If we want our children to learn get good values, then the teacher who's teaching must be a devotee, must follow devotional principles. And here's a little quote by Srila Prabhupada. What does he say? A person cannot be a teacher if he smokes or drinks. In the modern system of education, the teacher's academic qualifications is taken into account without consideration, without evaluation of his moral life. Therefore, the result of education is misuse of high intelligence in so many ways. So I'm going to share a screen with you. So I'm going to show a little PowerPoint. Okay. Sorry. There we go. Okay. So this is a beautiful quote by Srila Prabhupada, and I'm going to read it to you. If we train children by developing and encouraging their propensity to love Krishna, then we shall be successful in educating them to the topmost standard. Then they shall happily agree to do whatever you ask them. Initially, I was a beginner devotee when I first started out educating my children. And I thought, well, this quote really means that I have to train my children to be devotees, but then also I have to do things academically. Like these are two separate things. But here, what Prabhupada is saying is that when you educate them, you give them Krishna consciousness, that is education. And then discipline is not a problem. So I've already kind of explained to you Prabhupada's instructions on what he really desired for our children. A little bit of my experience, raising my children, just a short, brief experience. We were in America, and my husband and I, we moved to Boise. It's really a small town in America. It's the capital of Idaho, but really there were like 200,000 people, and there were no devotees, no temple, no association. And we thinking, what are we going to do now? And so I naturally, when the children got of school age, I was thinking, well, they have to find a school for them. And I had heard enough about this education here, about the values, especially about the values. And I thought, well, maybe I should put them in a private school where the children may get better association. So we both opted for a private school, and they went there for like 2 years. And I would volunteer time just to see what's going on. And there were many things that happened that disappointed me. And I realized, no, I have to find an alternative way. And one of the things was, there was a teacher in my younger one's class who was very young and very beautiful. And she had a boyfriend coming in class, and they would, behave intimately in front of the kids. Not very intimately, like, they would kiss a little bit and stuff like that, which is very normal in America. And so my son would come and tell me all those. So I thought, wow, this is not good. This is not good for my child. And then when he would eat, it would be a lunch break. Then he would open his box, and all the kids would tease him because he had, generally I would keep, pakoras or chapati and sabji, and they would all tease him, and the teacher would not do anything about it. There was one day when the teacher spent almost the entire day talking about discipline, because a couple of the kids were very badly behaved. I was thinking, hey, so much time has been lost, academic time. Why? Because some of these kids are misbehaved. Then another time I sat in my older son's class, and I noticed how the teacher has spelled God with a small g. I was thinking, oh, this is not good, Then I thought, okay, maybe academics is good. And then I sat in his math, some class it was. And I noticed how my older son was Radhika Raman, I noticed how he had finished his work a lot earlier than the other kids. And there were a couple more kids who finished early. And he had nothing to do. And he was sitting there bored. So again, schools are meant for the average. If you're above average, you're bored. And if you're below average, you're just simply frustrated. Can't keep up. So, and a lot of time, actually, I've actually personally talked to teachers, and they've told me that how actual study time in school for the entire 8-hour day is like 2 hours, maybe 2 hours. The rest of the time is spent in so many structural things, getting kids together, doing different things, different requirements, lunch and this and that. So we think that, oh, the kids are going to school for 8 hours a day and all they're doing is studying. How can I compensate for that? It's not true. Well, of course, the only option I had, was homeschooling. I did try to send them to Vrindavan to the group, and it was too far away. And plus, we were running a preaching center in a place where there was no devotees, and I needed them. We needed our children to help us, run this place, because my husband would go to work 8 or 10 hours a day, and there would be, and these, my boys would be able to help me. So we could not be brought them back. So then I started looking at different options, and homeschooling was just kind of quite new in America, not very a big thing like it's now. So, and among ISKCON devotees, there was hardly anybody who was doing homeschooling. So I was a little, naturally, we were both very scared. But however, I felt, okay, if I don't try this process, then what option do I have? send them back to school. And that is something that I really was trying to avoid. Because one thing that really bothered me was that when they came home, they were really not in a devotional frame of mind. And I was thinking, okay, it's okay. They're going to school. When they come home, I'm going to, do some music things, music classes, or we're going to read Krishna book or do something devotional. Because I really had that desire within my heart to actually teach them, from Prabhupada's books. And it was very difficult to pull them out from that frame of mind and to bring them into devotional frame of mind. Anyway, I kept trying and trying to make it work. And another struggle was to try to, invariably they would have some birthday party or something. There would be cake with eggs, and then there would be some meat and stuff like that. It was difficult, and so I was always running back and forth with, food that they could eat, making them special cookies and so many things. So again, I found myself spending so much time, even though I was supposed to have some free time when they went to school. So it became more stressful for me. So there were many, many reasons. I generally don't go so much in detail about this, my experience, but I know, I understand that, Prabhu is running this wonderful program where all of you are doing some kind of online schooling, and you can, educate me on that. I'm not quite well aware, but of all the details. But I just was trying to, give some conviction that there are options. And if we can have options, let's utilize them. And if you don't have options, then okay. Then if you have to send a child to school, there are ways you can try. And I'm here for that. In other words, all these alternatives, at least I can do my little bit of trying to help. But all these options, because as you know, most people don't go for that. They're very nervous about, not sending their children to school, and they'd rather not. But they're also very earnestly desiring their children to become devotees. So I also help them in that process. And the way I do that is by giving them these basic principles, in good parenting, or whatever your option is. Okay, these general principles are for everybody, whether you're homeschooling or not homeschooling. It's your choice how you want to do it, but definitely we have the pros and the cons. So this seminar is based on these three mottos that ISKCON has. And the first one is purity is the force. Because as you know, everything begins at home. Charity begins at home. So until we give them, the children, our good example, what can a teacher do? How much can a teacher do, right? It begins at home. In other words, our own environment at home, our own example, that has the greatest impact on a child. And I noticed that because many of you may have questions or what to do when they go outside and they have to play with other kids. And, and even among devotees, there are all different types of devotee children, right? How are children supposed to, you try to negotiate all this? Should I be should I have all these programs at home? Because are they going to feel out of place outside? Will they be able to adjust? So many questions come up, and very, very legitimate questions. But the thing is that the children, they've done research that the children learn most from their parents. That has the most impact on their character. We have so much now, even in India, right? There's so much exposure to all kinds of bad things, right? And by keeping those principles at home and giving them a good example, the children who have that example, they're able to overcome these negative influences. Actually, they did a study, when Gurukula initially had some problems, they did a study. The children who were well connected with their parents, they did better than those who were far away and they had hardly any connection. Even in a Gurukula situation. So in other words, we have a very big responsibility as parents. no matter how good the school is, and obviously it helps to have a wonderful school, right? Where there's devotee teachers and devotee children and all those things. But even then, we won't have perfection in material life, right? So how to give these principles to our children, where they encounter all types of people. And actually, when they encounter all types of devotee children and all types of people who are at different stages, it's actually good for them, because children are really smart and they learn how to negotiate these differences. They learn that material life is not black and white, but there are shades of gray. And that there will be people of different shades, but we have to learn to respect them, because everyone is an individual and meant to be respected, but it doesn't mean necessarily that we follow them. So if your own example is higher than what the children see outside, by giving that good example, you will help them to make proper decisions and to be able to discriminate between what's right and wrong. So it's like a threefold process. So we make a strong home, right? And then we give good academic basis, which means good Shastra. And that would be then my next part, because that's very important. Prabhupada he had such a great desire to introduce Srimad Bhagavatam in all his Gurukulas. Burijan Prabhu himself, he told me that and he tried to do that, in these early days. Because Prabhupada knew the Shastra has to be given to our children early on. Why? Because it feeds that intelligence. It gives that foundation by which they know, okay, how to act and why to act. Of course, more about that later. Let's quickly go through these first section. And then, of course, the last part is preaching is the essence. In other words, when we go out and give Krishna consciousness to others, then our own faith solidifies, right? I'm sure for yourself also, if you had to preach to somebody, if you had to give a class, you suddenly, become very strong. Your faith has to be there. Otherwise, how can you give it to anybody, right? Same thing with children. Parents always say that how at a certain age, they start becoming shaky. They become distracted and all that. And that's part of that growth, right? But when we involve them in these preaching activities, then they become stronger. Their faith develops. So there's some ideas, some examples of how you can do that will come later. So let's start with this first section, preparing the home. And this is a section that kind of, we all are aware, but we just may be needing a little bit more reminder, right? A little bit. And some of us may not be that aware, because how times are changing every year. Every year is just so different, right? They say in America, 20 years ago, the biggest problem was chewing gum. But now, what is the problem? Drugs, guns, so many problems. Of course, this is America, right? But I know India is not far behind, right? At least in the matter of drugs and things like that. And of course, mixing with the opposite sex and all that, it's very prominent in all over the world, not just America, in the Western part of the world, right? So these problems are, and we have to worry about these things, right? So what do we do? What do you do? So we have to, there are certain things, we have to avoid, try to avoid, because, it's like pouring water at the, at the tree, but also, but you give the tree enough nourishment, but at the same time you neglect it, right? So you have to do both. In other words, if you're practicing Krishna consciousness, trying to follow the regulative principles, then why would you expose our children to something that goes against following these 4 regulative principles? Just think, right? We're trying so hard as devotees to become a good devotee, but the screen is showing us things that are just opposite. So we can't ignore it, especially for our children who have very impressionable minds, right? Anything that you give in front of them, it becomes reality for them. They don't have that power of discrimination, okay? Especially younger children, that, okay, this is what I'm seeing, but this is not how life is. They think this is reality. What they see on the screen, this is reality for them. Now, we may think that there are some educational shows. Just about all of you will think about that question, right? Well, there's good shows, but the good shows, they're not without commercials, because this is how they make their money. Tons of commercial, and it puts, men and women in compromising situations. It exposes to all kinds of things, because these ads are especially geared for children at that age. So that's the problem. And of course, the whole problem is the addiction. This medium of addiction is very strong. Because when we put on the screen, you've noticed with your children, I'm sure, it's hard to get away from it. So you start with like some very educational things, and it ends up more and more screen time, more and more screen time. It's not just television, it's the internet now, right? Right, the laptop. But so it turns into more and more exposure to screen, because it's very hard to control, very hard to control. They've done research that when you watch when you're on the internet, especially gaming and all that, and I know I was in India just very recently for 3 weeks, and I went to so many places doing seminars. And one of the things that was the biggest on the parents' list is that how to get my children away from this addiction, how to get them away. So, they once they you give them screen time, they want to see more and more, and it's very hard to take them away. They get addicted to the point where they start gaming, video gaming. And if you try to take it away, they actually get very angry, because by now they're addicted. One mother told me that he threatens with suicide, his child, because he has to have that time. He's addicted. One mother came to me privately and said, her child accidentally went into a pornography show. And that's easy to get. You just click some wrong things and, accidentally, and you can get into that. And there's a lot of statistics here in America, how children who are totally innocent accidentally get into it, and they become addicted. And it's very hard. And then they don't tell their parents because they're scared. So in other words, at least people from my generation, we were not aware of this. We didn't have this. So one has to educate oneself. Even in your generation, they're very different from their night. The first thing as parents we have to do is to actually educate ourselves. What's going on there? To become educated, to become aware. So there's so many questions that will come out of this, okay, but what about this? But what about this? The point here is that, by watching different popular shows, it doesn't mean that the child is educated. It doesn't mean that he is in touch with the world. It doesn't take much to be in touch with the world. One doesn't have to watch hours of television or be on the laptop just to learn what's going on in the world. If you really have a passion for that, well, get a newspaper, read the headlines, and that's the end of it. And the reason is that parents, devotee parents or teachers, whoever, they have enough, because they read, because they are devotees and they read Shastra, they are able to give a Krishna conscious perspective on anything that's given to them, presented to them, because they have a perspective and they sound very intelligent. Have you ever had comments of people say, wow, this is deep. This is deep. Because the concept that we learn in Krishna consciousness makes us look very intelligent, because they are deep. They are sophisticated. Who grows up learning about the body and soul? About the three aspects of God, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. These are very deep principles that our children are learning. So don't worry about them being ignorant. In fact, material exposure gives the ignorance that creates in them. It's not like if you give a whole ton of, let them have choices, okay? If they want to be like this and like that, why should I stop them? Maybe later on they're going to revolt, right? But if we give them more of the devotional side, then later on, yes, they may get distracted. But what are the chances they're going to come back to it? A lot more than materialistic way of life, right? Because if you give them a whole bunch of materialistic just on the name of choices, then what happens? Well, very little chance. Yes, kripa is there, but there will be very little chance that they will become a devotee. So, and of course, the other problem with television is the medium. This is very important, which means that the way the television or internet, both of them, is presented is in a way that saps critical thinking and good reasoning, logic. Why? Because it's a one-way download from the brain to the screen. There's no interaction. You simply take in everything, and they've done research that during a time anybody watches, a child or adult watches anything on screen, then what happens is his brain activity is mush. In other words, zero. And they've done research that children who grew up being on the screen a lot, their intelligence level is a lot less. Their mental skills are poor. The math skills are not as good as those who are not exposed. So many academic studies have been done on this matter. So, but when you hear a radio, at least you are hearing and, you still are not decoding the words, but at least you're hearing and trying to create a picture in your mind. Okay, so your brain is working, there's creativity. But when you read a book, then you have to create a picture in your mind. Suppose you're reading a book on, some mystery things or some a big plot and somebody's chasing whatever. Well, you have to think about it. Or a forest scene. Okay, so everything is there. The creativity, the critical thinking, the reasoning. So reading a book is, or taking information through that is a lot better. India, it went through very quickly, from into industrialization. And the middle period, which was mass distribution of books, India escaped it due to this information age coming so fast, so computers and all that. So everybody has lost this habit of going to a library and reading books or bringing home books. Our children, they'd rather not. This problem is in the colleges, the professors are complaining. Our children don't want to research, do books. They want to go on Google, type of a few, cut and paste, and submit it as a paper. So this is all very detrimental. We can't even read Srila Prabhupada books like that. We have to go patiently through the books to see the context, right? So we can't let them forget this culture and then the internet and television. It takes away from that from our children and from us. So very important to do that. There's so much more on this topic, but due to the interest of time, we'll move on. So next, what are some of the things now we can do? So I just talked about what are the things that we should avoid. Now, what are some of the things we should do? So morning program is very nice, very important for our children because, and it gives us a pointer when Prabhupada, when he was giving instructions, he would send instructions to the Gurukula teachers. He wrote that how children don't need to do much austerities. They can eat, drink, run around, play, right? Everything's okay. But one austerity that Prabhupada really wanted the children and insisted on that is that they go for the morning program. Because if you start, and the way he explained is that if you start the day right, then you immediately, you kind of build like a shield or an armor so that, when if you do have to face the world, you are strong. So the men have to go out and face the world. They have a job. The women also, everybody. So everybody, because being in the material world, you can't avoid exposure. You can't keep yourself in a cocoon, right? They will be, so it keeps one strong with all the temptations, with all the exposure, whatever is there, now the exposure of, one is forced to go on the internet, right, due to homework or due to this and that. Well, I forgot to address that issue. Well, we can, what do we do then? Internet is a reality in our life, right? What do we do there? Do we end up in a stone age and not have them to do it? No, we have to. It's reality. But how we should do it? We just train our children to go on the internet, take what they need, and log off. And in order to do that, we have to set our own example. In other words, it's used like a tool. Just like a hammer, you take a hammer and you use it for the purpose, and then you keep it away, right? You don't carry it around all day. You don't have a relationship with it. So all these things are, and today it's a huge problem in social media, right? Social media is so huge right now, where children are getting so carried, there's so much. I mean, the suicide rate in America is getting higher and higher due to this exposure to all kinds of things, to social media, where they make a judgment about themselves through people that they don't even know. And when they don't get that approval, they're not looking for approval from us. They're looking for approval from their peers. Gone are the days when they would come in front of us and say, how am I looking? Am I looking nice? Can you tell me, Ma, Now they go to their friends for approval. And what's going to happen? Naturally, they're going to be frustrated. Because the reality is, people may project themselves as really wonderful on social media, but it's not that way. It's not reality. It's Maya. It's Maya in a best sophisticated way one can get. And this is really big time Maya for our children. So we have to really take that seriously. Anyway, I forgot that part. So sorry about that. So now regarding morning program, I was speaking how Prabhupada was stressing this, and it starts the day right. And it naturally, because we are chanting and dancing. It's nice to do it with the children. If you had to do it at home, then we should chant and dance with them. If one of you can do it, but the other one is busy, it's okay. And they can be involved in deity worship, where they can, maybe one of them can do the arti, the other one can lead the kirtan, like that. And more about that in the next section of deity worship. So, so in this way, we have to present them the joys of Krishna consciousness. That's one thing very important, right? That Krishna consciousness should be introduced to our children as joyful. So if they have a conflict, which way to go, they know that Krishna consciousness is so joyful, because it's voluntary, right? It has to be presented, but at the same time, there has to be discipline and education. So they go side by side, right? So in this way, by getting that first thing in the morning, they become attracted to Krishna. And especially Prabhupada was also very practical. So in other words, if our children are small, we can make it very short, or we can make it older or longer. I mean, on the weekends. If you don't have time and you're rushing, then maybe 5-10 minutes, 10 minutes. And then maybe, if there are days that are really bad, you can do it in the car while you take them. Like, put this habit in them that you start the day with the morning program. And this habit they'll be thankful. This habit will stay with them. Then the next thing is japa. And so many questions are there for japa, how to get, because this is one thing that children really have a hard time. So definitely there should not be force or punishment because a child has not done the japa, because that can act negatively. And even for that, Prabhupada, there were examples how Prabhupada handled this in Gurukulas. He once told the teachers that you don't use it like a punishment. In other words, okay, today you were bad. Now you go and chant one round. So what is the image it gives? That is negative, is bad. Japa is something, a punishment. I don't want to do japa, right? And it should not be used like a reward. Oh, you chanted 2 rounds today. Maybe a little bit, not too much, right? In the beginning, some reward maybe have to be there. Okay, I'll give you ice cream. Maybe in the beginning, just to get them going, get them started off, but don't make it as a usual thing, right? So both ways, you can feel it out as the protector. You can feel out what is best for them. And another good thing is to do it with them. So this way they're not developing bad habits, and also they feel, okay, everybody is doing, I'm also doing it. That really has very important, powerful effects also. So all this, at least, some rounds and things, and then you can try to adjust your own rounds like that. So eating prasadam is very nice, very important, and we all know this principle, but sometimes we get confused what to do, because how do we handle, the association with others who are, eating outside and things like that. I know one here, some children, they are really nice devotee children, but they do go out and eat pizza outside, So it depends, what you think you want to, how far you want to go. But the basic principle is there. Because if you give your children prasadam, it's going to help them become advanced devotees. Because prasadam, food, has a very powerful effect on us, okay? It is something that we take from, into our mouth, and it hits the soul directly. In other words, there were two things that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stressed, right? Chanting and prasadam. You know how in Chaitanya Leela, you see how constantly he was feeding the devotees, isn't it? Always taking care of that part. And it was always wonderful prasadam, right? So Lord Chaitanya stressed these two things as a way to take away this demoniac nature in us. And we all know that. You try to preach to somebody, preach, and nothing happens. And you give them a plate of prasadam, immediately their hearts melt, right? And you can keep preaching and preaching. So prasadam does have a very powerful effect in our children. And in the beginning, there may be some need of variety, because children's senses are really, they do everything with their taste. They want to taste all kinds of different things. So there's some work there, right? Trying to give them some variety and keeping them satisfied, but it pays off. Because such children who are satisfied with prasadam, then naturally the senses are more controlled. And then later on, they don't need so much variety. Because why? Other interests take over. So there's many ways to handle all the challenges that you may have, outside challenges. You go to a party and, children have devotee friends or non-devotee friends, and, and you're not able to get any other association, then you take, but then you remind the children. That's why Shastra is so important, to constantly, it acts as a reminder. And what we tell as a family, my husband did that same thing when he was working. And sometimes you have to go to office get-togethers where they all have to go to a restaurant and all that. So if there's a basic principle that you set, that you tell people that, okay, I don't eat food that's cooked in a kitchen that cooks meat. Not just that we are vegetarian. Otherwise people say, well, I promise you, this is all vegetarian. There's no eggs, nothing in this. And and there's nothing, I promise you, this is all good. But they've used things that have been used for meat. They may even had added inadvertently things that they didn't realize that it was a no-no for us. And all that. So all these problems. So if you tell them this, then they can understand better. And then what do? You order something like a salad or a fruit plate. So many options are there, right? And ultimately, they respect you for that. If you keep your principles straight from day one, while being very friendly to all, they actually respect you for that, and they may even envy you for good food, So there's ways to do it, and I would suggest keep those principles intact. Then you won't have problems with going to, certain situations, being exposed to certain situations where these problems arise. Good association We can't doubt that. It's good for us, it's good for our children, naturally. Devotee friends are the best because there's Krishna is always in the picture. Now, I've already talked about how there are different devotees at different levels. Still, at least Krishna is part of the picture, right? And sometimes they have to go to school. If your child is going to school, then okay, what do you do? Okay, they are in school, but no intimate association. In other words, they don't go for sleepovers over there because you don't know what to expect, obviously. You can call those children to your own home so you know, okay, and that way they're safe, right? So in other words, you don't, they don't go to like parties and stuff because obviously there's so much of contamination there, at least in America, or in elsewhere in Europe and all, there's exposure to different things, right? The close association between boys and girls. So all these things are there. So we need to protect these children. Well, no matter what your situation is, you need to keep an eye on that. And we have to give them a good adult association. And Prabhupada really stressed that. He talked about, Tarzan. If this child who grew up with this, Tarzan, and he developed the habits of monkeys, right? So in other words, as children don't grow up developing bad habits. Nobody grows up smoking and drinking. It's developed by association. So if you give us children good association, naturally they're going to come up good. And what are some of the best association we can give them? Is our own association that I already have talked about, right? Then the association of other devotees, especially senior devotees, or gurus or sannyasis, because they have a very powerful influence on our children because of their purity. That's why we say even a moment's association is so powerful. And every sannyasi you see always have to have time for our children because they know the value of it. As they get older, you can give them the mood of service for them, or even let them travel with them so that they can get it, they can understand. I gave our children opportunities like that where they started traveling with different, gurus at a time. And one time they went with Ganapati Swami. He's one who was coming regularly, to India, and they went to Mayapur and things like that. And the lessons they learned was amazing. It never left them, it was deeply implanted. Another time they traveled with another Guru Maharaj, and they were exposed again to all types of Vaishnava behavior, excellent Vaishnava behavior. So all these things are very important for our children, exposing them to advanced devotees, exposing them, and also to Shastra. So they are also associated with all these great souls within Shastra. So these things are very, very important. Deity worship is also very nice, as you can see. Children, they love this. It's like Prabhupada said, it's like a big play for them, because they like to play. So initially they start out with like a play, right? Of course, you're there to tell them, the borders, like what are the boundaries? You have to be there for that. But we also understand that these are children and they're learning, right? So just like, we see that how even Prabhupada, he talked about how his father gave him Radha and Krishna to, and he thought it's one big play, and gradually these very deities became his objects of worship. Same thing with Parikshit Maharaj, Uddhava, all these great personalities. So instead of spending time doing all kinds of wrong things or frivolous things rather, because our kids actually won't do the wrong things, but frivolous things, we can engage them in things like that. I know when my children were really little, like 3 and 5 years old, they were doing like deities worship for 2 hours. Because I thought, well, I have to sit with them anyway. I mean, in other words, I have to take care of them. Why don't I take care of them like that? And they had very small 4-inch Gauri deities. And it was amazing to see how absorbed they would become. And it would take them so much time. Obviously, I needed patience. They would drop things and so many things. But they loved it. They were so, you could see their consciousness was focused on those things. And so this is very powerful thing. If you don't have so much time, at least you can do for a little while. And as they get older, obviously the time reduces because you don't have that time. But when they're little, there's a lot of time, right? So, but whatever you can incorporate is going to be very important, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that children who grow up, in Jayavadharma, he said that children who grow up with focusing on the form of the Lord, such children actually, they become devotees. Otherwise, if they don't grow up with the form, then there's very good chance they may become atheistic and materialistic. So he said, deity worship is a foundation of for all humanity, foundation of religion for all humanity. So important. So now, of course, if you have a temple right next to you or something, you don't need deities, but we all know that keeping Gaur-Nitai deities is better, because Radha Krishna worship requires great standard. And Gaur-Nitai are very, very merciful. So it teaches them not only how to love, because God is a person, Krishna is a person. So they start relating to Krishna as a person. Krishna is somebody, he's somebody I can love, I can serve him. And that develops ultimately into good Vaishnava relationships. Why? Because they see the whole world as personal, not as impersonal that we see rampant today. Everything has become so impersonal. Everything, introduction, social media, this and that, everything is impersonal. Even to eat meat, you have to make it impersonal. No child will eat meat if you have the head on, right, of the animal. So everything is becoming so impersonal. So how to get them personal, where they can relate with devotees, relate with people, is to give them the form of the Lord. So here I have a little bit, we'll go really fast on this. Krishna consciousness in the early years, after age of 5, is mostly, as you can see, more exposure, the sights, the sounds. They're mostly playing at this age, how to dovetail their playing into Krishna conscious activities. Prabhupada spoke endlessly about every stage of a child's life. It's amazing. When I started getting into that, into understanding all that, I was amazed how much Prabhupada at every stage, he has advice, instructions for us. Prabhupada, his purpose, his instructions are not only for the 20th century, but also for the 21st century. In other words, they are timely for us today and for future, for our children. They are not like something we cannot follow. We may have to adjust a little bit according to our situation, like the children are not in Gurukula, but they're at home or whatever. But the instructions, the principles are very, very deep and very, very strong. And the rewards are there for all of us to see. So he stressed about how children should be playing with Krishna conscious games. It does have an effect because Krishna is absolute. So when children make believe and, or imagine Krishna going to the forest, killing the demons, or, Krishna stealing butter, whatever they're playing, then Krishna is with them. Why? Because Krishna is absolute. So they're making advancement. They're thinking about Krishna. So that is why he stressed indoor and outdoor games to be Krishna consciousness. We can't rule them out. We have to try them. Okay? And of course, showing them picture books. I remember when my children were small, we had this Bhagavatam set, and at that time there were many more volumes and they had all these pictures, and we would go through those pictures and the children would love repetition, and I was thinking by now they would want to go to the next picture, but no, every day they wanted to come back to it and see it again, because children like repetition. So they're exposing them and then taking them everywhere. wherever you go, in a Krishna conscious activity, don't leave them behind. Because when when children are part of your life, then they learn that Krishna consciousness is part of my life. There won't be any generation gap. A lot of the problem is that parents go and do everything, but they leave their children behind. So what happens is children don't relate with us. They think, oh, Krishna consciousness is for them, but for me, I have better things to do. This is a huge problem today, So we have to, cut out this generation gap by involving our children with us. One time we did a seminar in Chowpatty temple, and there's so many. I mean, I think there were like 40% brahmacharis there, and I was thinking, wow, and then later on, I talked to them, and they said they preached to the grahastas. Chowpatty is a very wonderful temple, and they preached to the grahastas, and they were noticing how the grahastas were, their children were not doing well. In other words, they were getting into all kinds of, media things and things like that, and they were not interested in coming to the temple. So they were kind of losing their children, but the parents were just like really nice devotees, really good devotees. They were doing seva and everything that one can be proud of, right? But what about the children? And their biggest concern was how to bring the children back. How to today in today's society, and I know it's happening in India also, a young child doesn't relate with the parents or any elders, to say, and they think that, and they have their own life. They have their own dress. They have their own language. They have their own music. They are their own species, right? And there's huge problems. Why? Because they haven't learned responsibility. And that responsibility comes when children associate with adults also. That responsibility comes. And of course, as we get older, your situation may be different. You may be taking your child to school or whatever. But basic principle is have 1 hour missing, sorry. It's the 5 R's. Reading scriptures, which means reading, writing is missing here, sorry. Reading, writing, wrote, which is memorization, wrote, reading, writing, wrote, and music, and raga, right? Okay, yeah. So reading, writing, wrote, and raga. So these are very important things in their life, because this becomes and math, and also math, right? So this becomes the basis for all good education. Why? Because good language gives the foundation for all the humanities, and math gives the foundation for all science subjects. So language, strong language, gives the foundation for any humanities subject the child may go for. And math gives the basis for all science subjects. So if you teach them these 2 things, and music, very important for the child's, sanity, right? You study the whole day or whatever, or do things, but if you chant and do music, then immediately the body relaxes, and we experience the finer things in our life. And the brain needs both of it. And then memorization is very important, because they've done studies where for the first 12 years, the brain is very sharp, and we take advantage of them by helping them memorize shlokas and all that, but not like a parrot, okay? Not like a parrot. And of course, Sanskrit is very good. It's the mother of all languages. So if you can arrange some Sanskrit, fine, because it takes 12 years to master Sanskrit. That's what Prabhupada said. So if one starts early, then you can master it. Otherwise, Prabhupada was not in favor of his disciples learning Sanskrit. And a lot of them learned Sanskrit just through Srila Prabhupada's books, Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. just by understanding what I know. Many of senior devotees and American sannyasis who are fluent in this language. They can, and it's because they learn through Prabhupada's books. So there's different options for different people, but the idea is really this. So we go to our next section, which is books are the basis. So Prabhupada, he stressed is the study of English and Sanskrit for the children. Why? Again, the idea was by giving a strong language skills, the child would be naturally benefit because he'll be able to read Shastra. And Sanskrit obviously gives you more appreciation of the scripture. So he would stress these two things. And he said, if you get educated in these two things, then one can read these scriptures and one can be MA, PhD. So let me read these three quotations by Srila Prabhupada, which is only a few of the many quotations that he had. Our students specifically, they should take care of reading Srimad Bhagavatam. We have therefore prescribed in our school Dallas. And from the very beginning, if they begin education with Bhagavad Gita and then come to Srimad Bhagavatam and read the whole literature, then they will be more than MA, PhD. Imagine what Prabhupada is saying. That he's saying that if one reads Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, he will be more than MA, PhD. Even astronomy, astrology, politics, sociology, atomic theory, everything is there. Therefore, if you study Srimad Bhagavatam very carefully, then you get all knowledge completely. Throughout the whole world, whatever knowledge is there is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. If one simply reads the Srimad Bhagavatam, his education is the topmost. If one studies Srimad Bhagavatam, he is well versed in every subject matter. Because Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada explains that it gives education on every subject matter. So if your foundation is based on the study of Srimad Bhagavatam, so if you ever have to study any subject from outside books, you won't have a problem because it's already given you the basis, the foundation for that subject, right? And what happens is when the children go into the world and they encounter all types of conflicts and doubts, their reading, their faith in Srimad Bhagavatam is going to put it into perspective where they will know what is right and what is not right. For example, when children go to college, they, in philosophy, they are teaching all kinds of impersonalism. How to, and children do get affected by that because the teacher is passionate about that, right? So by a good solid foundation in Bhagavatam, and then at anthropology, the origin of man, they have all kinds of atheistic theories that they teach the children or the students, I mean. And what do? Well, a strong foundation in Bhagavatam will give a proper perspective of the origin of man, right? So many scientific theories are there. Now that's big in science. And the way they present it is so attractive and so enamoring that children get carried away. They want to believe that. Why would they want to believe something that, of any scripture says, especially in Bible, They don't want to hear that, all that, because, well, how does it happen suddenly, right? But if they read Srimad Bhagavatam, this process of origin is given so systematically in so many cantos, one by one, right? And Prabhupada, his own quotations, his own morning walks is, defeats all these atheistic theories. And he defeats them in such a wonderful way because Prabhupada was training his disciples how to encounter these things because there's so much of that. And he wanted to equip them, right? The Big Bang theory, Darwin's evolution theory, the chemical evolution theory, so many theories are there. And for each one, Prabhupada counters it. There's a magazine called the Origin magazine. And there's many nice articles there that you can take hold of yourself and learn these things. And of course, it's all everywhere in the purports. Prabhupada is again and again defeating these theories. And there's no time to get through with all these theories. But just to let you know that, and I do that. I do some phone classes for children. And it's amazing, we kind of discuss these things. And it's amazing how much they're exposed to and how much faith they get through the Bhagavatam. And then they become strong. They really become strong. They know that they're going to encounter, because they're going to do higher studies, and it's all about, materialism, atheism, impersonalism. So that gives the faith. So there's wonderful spiritual benefits, good role models, we have in the Bhagavatam. And these, the qualities of such great people, personalities, they rub on the children. They actually rub on these children. And they actually want to follow them and become like them. So children, they need good role models. It's very important. In the growing up years. Whichever model you put in front of them, that's what they want to become. So now we see in society, children have bad role models. And it's really sad, because they want to imitate them. They either become skeptical or they want to imitate them. And the consequences are bad. Because we have to understand that these stories in the Bhagavatam, they're transcendental stories. And Srimad Bhagavatam is on the purest level. It's Shuddha Sattva, right? And today we see that how, we have these three modes in material nature, right? And there's no pure goodness in this world, right? So in other words, if children are only dealing with people who are in the mode of goodness, well, it sounds like they are very, they're good people and all that. But because pure goodness cannot remain, is not here, then very soon that goodness turns into passion and ignorance. Okay, because it doesn't stay unless we have transcendental exposure and transcendental models through the process of chanting and hearing. Association of any kind other than transcendental association, it doesn't stay. There was one hero here. He was a big tennis player or something, and the entire advertising market was hiring him for advertising. Why? Because he was presenting a picture of a wonderful, moral person, a good family man, very good, very hard worker, and he would practice his game nicely. So parents wanted them to follow. And within a span of a couple of years, we heard the worst scandal about him. He was cheating on his wife. He was having this affair with somebody, all kinds of things. And all the advertising companies, they just dropped him. And for a couple of years, he was just like the person. So it doesn't stay here. So we shouldn't be doubtful about giving our children this exposure to good examples in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And also, here I'm going to talk about academic benefits, which is very, very interesting. So academic benefits means that it's giving skills to our children that no other book can really, really give. Because it develops in our children this critical thinking skills and the strong reasoning abilities. Because as you noticed, if you're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, you notice how every story is not just a story plot line. It really takes us very deep, isn't it? It takes us very deep. Because it makes us think and makes us want to analyze. There's different scenarios presented, and one has to take decisions, right? For example, the story of Jai and Vijay, when they were cursed by the sages. Well, there's so many different ways one had to think about, right? Were they right? Were they right? Were the sages right? Well, if the sages were right, then was anger a good thing? Should a devotee be cursed just for a small mistake and given such a heavy curse? After all, they were trying to protect the Lord. They were they were at the innermost gate. It was their duty to protect the Lord. But then was Jay and Vijay right by stopping these powerful, wonderful sages? Should they have shown their anger? So many questions, and it takes us through all this, and it develops in our children this ability to reason and think. They say that if you want to be a lawyer, what they're looking for in America, the best students for lawyer is those who have done philosophy. Not because of the content, but because of the skills that's needed to come to philosophical solutions. So if our children learn Srimad Bhagavatam, they end up becoming the best lawyer. Anything to adopt. Today in the world, employers are looking for people who are not only just good, who can, who got good marks or something in their school, in their college, but they're looking for people who have good critical thinking skills. Not only people who are looking for, who can give good answers, but people who can provide good questions. This is what today the world market is looking for. Communication skills. So the process that I'm going to describe to you very soon, it develops communication skills, good vocabulary. And Prabhupada just said, it's an MA, PhD. We know the language that Prabhupada uses is very elevated language. Children who grow up in vocabulary, they don't have a problem in language. I know my children, my experience was that just accidentally, they happened to go to college early because we were homeschooling. I was homeschooling, but then we started a restaurant. And the children would, we met a person who was chairman of the English department, and he noticed how the children had very good command over language. And he said, Aurora, you should send them to college and to Boise State University, which is right here, and let them have an English, sign up for English class. I said, oh, they are so young. How will they be able to manage? He said, no, it's okay. They'll probably, it'll be something for them more challenging. And I took it up, and I went and I talked to the dean because I had to get special permission. And just to make the long story short, they had to take one exam on English placement, and they scored like in their 90s. And so he was convinced, and then they end up, I started, and then he said, okay, you talk to the teacher of the class, and then we did that route. And most of the classes were full because it was too late. But there was one class, the honors class, that was open, and that too at the second level honors class. And this teacher, he kept pushing me to send, my older one to that class. My younger one was too young. And so I did. And it's amazing how, due to the study of Srimad Bhagavatam, he had no problem doing Shakespeare for the first time and other Mexican writers and all these classical writers. And the teacher was amazed. He was 5 or 6 years younger, and yet she gave him a straight A. And the reason is because his ability to go deep into something. She said, while the others were just looking for the storyline, your child was going deep and trying to understand why Shakespeare's saying this, why he's not saying this. What is his idea about reincarnation, whatever that was. And so, you see, and I know many other children within ISKCON, who are having wonderful results just by teaching their children this wonderful transcendental literature. And why Bhagavatam is because the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita is presented in stories, and children love stories. It's just easier to digest. And you can also do Bhagavad Gita at the same time, not a problem. Okay, so this is the methodology for teaching Srimad Bhagavatam that I personally adopt, and you can try it out, and it's had a lot of good results for people. So what do you, if you have the time, you can read some purports ahead of time. Okay, that will help. because then you will have a little deeper perspective. If you don't have the time, don't worry about it, still do it. And because when I first started out, we were running a preaching center and it was a lot of things to do and I didn't have the time. But now I suggest, okay, if you have the time, do it, because it really, helps in picking out different things that you want to. You cannot talk about every topic. Bhagavatam is taught in layers, okay, and over lifetime, they're going to go through every layer. So you're trying to give them the first or second layer. And even within your time, while the child is with you, you'll see that he's already passed many layers. Because when you start out in the beginning, then naturally the capacity for understanding abstract things, difficult things, becomes a lot greater. So that means even a 5-year-old child or a 7-year-old child will go much deeper than what another 8-year-old child can do. And what to speak of vocabulary, there's so much there, and you can try different ways. You can do that. Because I was teaching them at home, I was picking out words from the Bhagavatam, just maybe 5 words, and you would discuss it. And mostly we were doing oral work. And later on, the writing came much later. And then, of course, discussion is very important. Because why? Because it opens up the mind. It sharpens the intellect. When we discuss, we actually start assimilating and realizing, right? The whole discussion with the sages was a discussion, right? Sutta Goswami, the stages, was a discussion. Of course, nowadays it's all changed. It's a monologue. The teacher talks, the children listen. And it's not very effective. So discussion is very important. At least some discussion has to be there. The teacher obviously takes a major role in explaining and leading and the whole thing. Then reflection is the part where the child is my most favorite part, where the child, reflects. The realization part, where you've already done a chapter. Like I would do a chapter a day, and that would be about an hour long, depending on the size of the chapter. But a chapter with about 40 verses would take about 30 to 40 verses would take about an hour. And then, and then right at the end of every class, there should be reflection where the child gets to speak. Now, in a school situation, that may not be possible, right? I totally understand that. So you can adjust accordingly. But the idea is the importance of studying Srimad Bhagavatam. And you can then kind of adopt it according to what you think best. So this is, again, this is just looking at pictures and things for a little child. And in London, they got inspired by this whole process. And they started a baby Bhagavatam group where they give these toddlers, they meet once a week. And these toddlers are all the way, I think, to 4 or 5, like that. And they do a chapter a day, and through very creative ways. And they're doing systematically a chapter in the Bhagavatam. And they've had wonderful results. So this can be done. You can do it at home with your child also. And then, of course, as the child gets older, he still may not be able to read, at least the 5-year-olds or 6-year-olds, 4-year-olds. But you can read to them stories like Prahlada, Dhruva, because they can relate with these stories. Or you can start from the beginning. Now we have these books that I will be telling you about, the Srimad Bhagavatam books, canto by canto, chapter by chapter, that we are putting out, that is meant to help in that process of reading and activities that helps digest that philosophy in a simple and fun way. So here we read to them, and then we can create a nice picture and explain to them, right? And because so in this way, I once was with a girl for 45 minutes to an hour, and she was like 4 years old, and she sat through it. And then you ask factual and simple, challenging questions, and you'll be amazed how deep they can go. It's amazing. I'll tell you a story of one child that I was doing. He's my grandson, and I was doing it, sometimes over Skype and things like that. And we were doing Bhagavatam every day, and about for half hour, and we were doing this Dhruva story, and there was the section where Jay and Vijay come to take Dhruva back to Godhead in that beautiful airplane. It's such a beautiful description of Nanda and Sunanda and all that. So he got really inspired by that. And he said, Dadi, I want to go on that plane. And I said, okay. I knew he was a child, and it's really, he got a little inspired. And I said, okay, well, one day you can go. And then I wanted to move on. And then he went back and he said, no, but I want to go right now. I want to go right now in that plane. Then I said, okay, think about it. If you want to go, then you'll have to leave your parents behind, because they cannot go right now. And he started thinking about it, and he said, okay, I'm going to wait, because I don't want to make the same mistake that Ajamal did. So, and that Ajamal story we had read many months ago, So imagine such a small child, I think he was 4.5, how a child could bring it back, how he could take two stories and put it together. So don't underestimate your child. They have a great capacity for doing all that. If you begin at the right time, then naturally it grows. Now, of course, if they're older now, it never harms. I mean, any time Bhagavatam is going to do wonderful results. So these are the 18, of course, on and on, beyond 15 also. So these, the story is the same process. It just gets deeper and deeper. The more the questions of why and how, comparisons more. So like that. And I'll tell you that there's so many nice examples in Shastra, in Bhagavatam, that really gives that point, of getting, trying to analyze this, giving these analytical abilities and all that, and really helping the child understand material life. You see, what happens if you give the nature of material life in the context of Bhagavatam, with the help of Bhagavatam, then children are able to actually, face material life in a very positive and good way. And they actually can become happy here because they're doing it in the right way. They're doing it in the right way. So this is the importance. Like, for example, I'll tell you, like the Prahlada story, right? The Prahlada story, we see two personalities, right? Prahlada, the greatest devotee, hero, right? And his father, Nrsimha, the biggest demon. Now, how were they able to live together, right, in the same place? It's because Prahlada is the hero. So it teaches the children that even in this world, which is full of Hiranyakashipus, perhaps, right? How does one live in this world, which is maybe full of demoniac people? And we can see how Kali Yuga is getting worse and worse every day, right? How Krishna protected Prahlada. Everybody, it was hard for Hiranyakashipu to control his senses, right? He was trying to control everything, the air, the water, everything. All the demigods were under his control. But he could not even control his own son. He could not even control his anger. And look at Prahlada. He was so kind and compassionate to his own father. He was able to tolerate everything and was so compassionate. So we see that distinction, and children learn how they can live in this material world. Of course, we cannot all be Prahlad, but we can see, but that faith develops. Because see, Bhagavatam, what it does, it keeps on raising that bar for us. It keeps on getting more and more, take shelter of Krishna. And they also learn the nature of demoniac qualities. In other words, how Hiranyakashipu, because of his envy of Krishna, he wanted to destroy everything. Anything connected with Krishna, with Vishnu, he wanted to destroy. Okay, he hated the sages and the brahmanas, and they liked fruit trees. They liked fruits, so he destroyed the fruit trees. So anything that was connected with protecting the Vaishnavas, protecting the sages, protecting, all these things he destroyed. He destroyed the environment. Why would anybody destroy their own kingdom? It's because of his hatred or envy towards Krishna. So the children learn how ultimately Krishna, by loving Krishna, all the problems in this life can be solved. It's very, very deep. And so many things, Parikshit Maharaj's humility, unparalleled, right? And then on top of that, good leadership, how he displays. It's not like if somebody is humble or he cannot be a great leader. So the greater one is, the more humble one becomes, right? So this comes right through everywhere. Lord Chaitanya in Chaitanya Leela, he displayed his humility in front of all these great intellectuals. So all these stories are meant to help the children develop good character. Okay, and the analogies and metaphors and all that which is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam helps the children understand material life through spiritual examples, through these spiritual analogies. It's very powerful. So this is what these analogies do to children. It gives them a very solid way to understand material life. For example, the difference between the car and driver is the difference between the body and soul, right? And by understanding this analogy, which Prabhupada goes so deeply in some places, the child can understand, okay, why I have to take care of the soul. It's amazing. You know how Prabhupada took one reporter. He spent like a long time with this reporter unless he understood the difference between the body and soul through the analogy of the car and the driver. And the arguments he uses is just amazing. So I can't go through that example, but just to let you know how these things are really powerful. And you can actually do them now more easily due to the books.
Yes.
Sorry, yeah. So this is the Dhruva story, which is a wonderful book, a wonderful chapter where this, actually Lord Chaitanya read this hundreds of times. Why? Because there's thousands of lessons from these books that one can learn, thousands. And one can learn at each layer. One layer is, okay, give up envy. If you don't like something in somebody, go to Krishna. The way to resolve is not to harm somebody, because that harm will come to you. This is what Suruchi taught. That was one thing, right? One level. Another level is, okay, why does Suruchi suffer such a heavy reaction? What did she do? Vaishnava offense. But the king did not. King also ignored Dhruva. While the king atoned for days, for 6 months, he atoned day and night. He gave up his kingdom. He was really, really sorry. Different reactions to different people. The quality of gratefulness that Dhruva gave, very meaningful to us. You try to teach them gratefulness, but you teach them gratefulness to all Vaishnavas, to parents. You try to teach them through this story, it goes really deep. Because Dhruva Maharaj did not forget what his mother did to him. Even after 36,000 years later, he wanted his mother to go back with him. That happened a long time after. And his mother talked about this maybe a little while. But this is called, because he always saw, that she lighted the path for him. So many deep things. So it goes deeper and deeper, and our own realization will go deeper. I didn't start out with so many realizations, believe me. You may say, well, Mataji is, knows all this, but I don't. Well, I started out as a new devotee who could barely go to the first or second level, But the nature of Bhagavatam is so wonderful that it'll take you deeper and deeper as time goes on. How Suniti changed an unfortunate situation, a wonderful lady, right? Because she took something so unfortunate and made it into such a fortunate situation by giving the right direction. She had so much integrity in her chastity towards Krishna, right? Where she guided him the right way. And that's why she became so glorified. It's because of her chastity to Krishna. Her external circumstances was very sad, but she made the most of it by keeping her faith and guiding her child in the right way. So these are some of the lessons that I won't go with you right now. Preaching is the essence. I talked to you already about that. So many things, a little bit, so many things we can do with our children. It's a very important part. It's a way to expose them outside, but in a protected way. We can't keep them isolated, right? And we know that, right? Otherwise, the children become very, like cut off. Right? How do we do that is by, exposing them, by allowing them to present Krishna conscious philosophy to others. And of course, initially it's not easy. So my husband and I, we were doing it. But then as they got older, because they were watching, observing, they were able to do it themselves. That faith was developing. And of course, the children always have opportunity to do something. They can chant, do that 5-minute chanting. They can show tilak, how to put on tilak, or so many, or dots for the girls or boys, so many things they participate in. And they would come home so inspired. So giving them leadership, giving them a way where they can, present it to others, develops their own faith. And it's a great way to learn, is through teaching. We all know that. We have to know our subject matter really well when we teach, right? And so as my children grew older and they were developing more and more confident, there came a time when they were able to, and this started out when they had to make a presentation in a high school school. That was the first time my older one went to give a presentation, and he was so nervous. His legs were shaking, everything was shaking, but he went through it and he developed confidence. So festivals and temple programs is very nice to be involved in temples, in festivals, very important part of their growing up. Taking part in dramas. Dramas are so nice for the children because it gives them a way to express. Everybody wants to express emotions. Expressing emotions is a very important part of our psyche, right? Even in spiritual life, you see how devotees are expressing their love, their emotion for Krishna. So here, this becomes a wonderful, drama becomes a wonderful way for children to express their creativity and their emotions. And they lose their stage fright also. I know many devotee children and parents came and they said, when we were in Boise, running this temple, then they would come, the things they've lost, the things they learned, there were more opportunities here in the temple for them to act out than in school. How many children are they going to accommodate to teach them public speaking or public presentation? Generally, children go to college to learn that first time. Vacations also very important, nice for them. Rajmandal, or shorter tours by sannyasis and temples, because it brings Krishna into action, it becomes real for them. When they go to Vrindavan, it becomes real for them. They're not just reading from books. This is where Krishna did his pastime. This is what happened. This is where Mother Yashoda tied him with a rope. This is where Krishna's footprint is. This is where Krishna danced the peacock dance with Radharani. Tons and tons of places. It's nice for children. We did the Braj Mandal Parikram 3 times with my children, and we started out early. Those were the real, tough days when they didn't, there were so many challenges, right? And they came back so changed. It did amazing. The association of other devotees, they, sleeping in a tent at night, realizing that actually to live, one doesn't need much. So many things, the practical things they were learning, and what to speak of the spiritual benefit that they had in terms of association and how to do some austerities, the soreness of the feet, and so many wonderful things. It was really, really nice. So what about the theme parks and zoos that we have wherever you live? Oh, it's okay. They can go. Our principle was we went, we tried to make a target, some spiritual Rath Yatra or something, and whatever was along the way, we would stop and look. Okay. Children who don't grow up with Mickey Mouse and all these characters, for them, this is not a big thing. Theme parks, especially, Disney World and Disney World, because they don't know how to relate with these characters. They never grew up with these things. I remember my children were a little bored because there's long lines to get into one ride. It was big lines, waiting for like half hour or something. Okay, so I'm going to stop here and go through and just now show you the resources. And this is Krishna's Homeschooling Krishna's Children. This is the first book that I wrote, and it was published by BBT. And it says homeschooling, but actually it's all about parenting. It's the principles are the same. So if you like to read, you can get that and read. It gives like my own experience and the basic things to watch out for in parenting, which I went through with my own experience in context with, obviously based on what Prabhupada's instructions were. Now, some years ago, we started this project of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, actually, I have to actually change this because we just published Canto 5. So we are now working on Canto 6. Yeah, well, it's already available. So it is already available everywhere. So what we are trying to do here, we have a team of people, very accomplished teachers and, parents and computer specialists and all types and editor and layout people. We have a whole team and we work very hard to do systematically, chapter by chapter, every chapter of Bhagavatam. And we try to cover one chapter a week, and everybody sends their material and we put it all together, delete, add, and things like that. And what the result is a wonderful book of different activities that children can get from the book. In other words, it starts out with a story summary, which gives a summary of the chapter. Then we have these questions, the higher thinking questions, which kind of help in the discussion for the parents. Of course, you can add much more. There are questions for younger children who need simpler questions, and that's done to multiple choice. And then we have critical thinking questions, and these are done through activities that children can have fun with, but at the same time, they're learning all this philosophy. Then there's introspective activities, theater activities, there's art projects, language activities. So there's a whole bunch of things there. And there's a lot more activities than you can handle. But the idea was that to give the choice, to give a wide variety. These books are being used at the Vrindavan Gurukul and also in Mayapur. And they've had wonderful results from these books. So if you'd like to get a copy, they're all available locally in Delhi and also on Amazon everywhere. You can order through Amazon. So here I'm going to stop screen sharing, and I will open it up for questions. So, sorry, I know I'm over time, but if anybody has any questions, and then you can ask and I can try to answer them. Now the question, just to recap a little bit, we did 3 sections. Environment of the home, purity is the force, that we did the study academic curriculum or study of the Bhagavatam, and then preaching is the essence.
Mataji, can I ask one question?
Yes, of course. So,
Yeah, Mataji, what if we are living in apartments in Mumbai, and there are not so many devotee families around,
mm,
and obviously the child has to play with all other kids in the society, the campus of the society. Then
mhm.
they are not devotee children, and they may discuss many things about new video game, new mobile gaming, etc. So how do we deal with such situation?
Yes, April. Well, like I said earlier, giving a strong home environment, which I tried to explain, is very important because then the child has a way to relate with things, and along with that, reading Shastra every day, with your child, try to read every day, at least some days of the week, so you will be able to give him the intelligence, the power of discrimination, how to see things in an intelligent way. Okay, Shastra gives that intelligence to be able to see what's what. This is right and this is wrong. The mind has many, develops so much desires due to contact with the objects of the senses, but then the intelligence is where, one can discriminate. That intelligence, where one can put a perspective on, right? Okay, no, I shouldn't be like this. No, I should not give in to this, right? And that comes through reading Shastra and associating with these transcendental heroes. So when we do that, this combination of good example and Shastra, and also, uh, giving him, allowing him, taking him to different places to present Krishna consciousness, and he getting exposed to that, then he's going to, between the three, we used to take our children to schools, and we used to present the philosophy. In other words, developing all three really helps in in giving that strength to that child, even when he's exposed, because he has to play, he has to have something, that he's other children to play with. You can't keep him isolated at home. So that's okay. Like I said, they learn how to negotiate these things if you put all this into the picture. Okay, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavad Pranam. This is Indulekha from Hyderabad.
Hare
All
Krishna.
glories to Srila Prabhupada. Mataji, I would thank you in many ways because you are a kind of inspiration for me. Because in 2014, when my husband decided not to send children to school, my first question was how they can survive in this competitive world. Then I happened to approach so many devotees in the temple, and one of my god sister, she suggested me to read the Art of Parenting book, which was given by you. Then Mataji, I happened to get all three these books, cantos, like then I hope you can see this Srimad Bhagavatam cantos, which were published by you. This was the first books which I happened to start in the homeschooling, like how it was said in the Art of Parenting and the homeschooling, which is given by you, Mataji. So I am very happy and fortunate and blessed so that I can, because I happen to see you in this way, and I also thank all the KC Siksha team members who have provided this session. Hope to hear many things from you, Mataji, in future also.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you for your encouraging words. All credit goes to Srila Prabhupada.
Yes,
What I would be today
yes,
without his guidance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Other devotees can ask. Yes. Jyoti Mataji, yes, correct. You're muted, Mataji. You're muted. We can't hear you, Mataji. You're muted. But unmute. Oh, you're not able to unmute. Okay, 1 minute. You can unmute, Mataji. Can you unmute? 1 second. Yeah, okay.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Mataji, thank you for the wonderful session. And really, we feel blessed to have you amongst us. Mataji, I have 2 kids. My daughter is 13 years old. So we have started this KC Shiksha. So, by the time the KC Shiksha school gets over, it's 10 o'clock over here in the morning. 10 or sometimes 10:30. So after that, they are free, so my daughter, she's she does a lot of arts and all these things are related to Krishna consciousness. But the problem is my son, he's exposed to the media and internet. Like my daughter also uses, but it is for some creative work. But he's now interested in the games and all these things, Mataji. Actually, we are a group of Matajis who are doing book reading, Srila Prabhupada book reading. So that is from 10:15 to 11, 45 minutes we do book reading every day. So I encourage my children that you also participate, but they don't want to participate, Mataji. It's very it's like simple only book reading. Srimad Bhagavatam we read, but how to encourage them, Mataji, then?
Yeah. So your son is also going to KC Shiksha? Is he also going to this school? Very good. So, so the thing is that regarding, first of all, your first, question about, being exposed to all this medium, you, like I explained, you have to control that. Because what happens as parents, we are really scared of taking that step. Because the child is so attached and we become weak. But the point is that, if you do a little research, there's a very big personality called TED Talks, TED shows, and he's done some very insight observation where he's interviewed a lot of these younger people, these teenage people, as to social media. And many of them, they were actually hoping that their parents took it away and never gave them. One child wrote spoke that everything evil was at her door, everything. Why? Because the parents were too weak to take it away. You see. Now, if they need phones, then you can give them a what do you call this? Clip phone, those ones that don't have the access to the internet, where then they can use that. Flip phones, right? There's different ways to do it, and as a community, it's nice to come together and make these rules, because then you have more power, You see, the statistic is there. All these things lead to more and more problems every day. The Apple founder, somebody interviewed him and asked him that your children must be having the latest. He says, I never gave them. They don't have it. He said, why not? He says, because it's very bad for them. The owner of Apple is not giving these smartphones to his children because he knows. And why are they doing it? Obviously for profit. And they'll go through any means to try to convince you, whatever it takes. And they've done every bit of research to capture these children at their weakest moments. See, the time when the children are bored, right? They've captured that. They've given all these tools wherein the child, instead of being creative, when you get bored, you become creative, right? If you're not exposed to this technology, then you start thinking, oh, maybe I can do this. I can do this hobby. Maybe I can go outside and garden. But they've captured these kids where they know that all they have to do is start clicking. So they've taken away all that wonderful creative time that children can do positive things, and they've given them tools. And we are being sucked into it, you see? So like I said, it has to be used like a tool. Okay, if they get homework that they have to do, well, that's when they go to school, because these schools are also sucked into this, you see? And they're forcing the children to do everything on internet. After educating myself into all this and seeing the problems, I don't try to, mince things. I know that this is a huge problem in society today. Huge problem. And we're losing our children due to this uncontrolled exposure. And as parents, we have to keep a stop on that. And the children themselves are crying out. See, they don't know it, but internally they're suffering. Now you have to substitute by things at home where the child can be engaged. We're too busy also sometimes in our own life. We want everybody else to do the job, except for ourselves, isn't it? Or we may get jobs or something where we keep ourselves so busy. Okay, so try to take steps, and initially it's hard. And the longer you wait, it becomes harder and harder. There's just not enough time to talk endlessly about that, unfortunately, for me. Okay. So, Hare Krishna.
Nitigata.
Hare Krishna, Pranam Mataji. Thank you for giving us a wonderful association. Mataji, I am teaching kids science, and earlier I was teaching maths. So Mataji, I really, whenever I teach children, I feel like I should, connect them with, concept of Srimad Bhagavatam, or, how, I really think that how I can teach them through Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. So like this atomic theory, I can relate them. But other topic, I am really finding, myself that how to teach them. So Mataji, can you please give me some guidance?
Yeah,
How we can teach?
Yeah. This is a good question, because I really didn't explain that part where you don't have to take different subjects out from Srimad Bhagavatam. You just systematically teach them one after another. These subjects will automatically come. They're going to learn, because Srimad Bhagavatam covers every subject. Prabhupada himself said that, right, in that quote. So do not try to take out, okay, this is where I can teach them this thing and this, if you can, because it's going to be very hard. What I would try to do is just teach them systematically. And it's very difficult for children also to go through lengthy purports. So we do the purports, give them the essence of the purports, as, and the activities also in the book are doing that job. Okay. So it's going to be hard, yeah, if you're going to take out this subject from here and that subject from there. To some extent, you can. Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Thank you, Mataji.
So in other words, we are just reading translations and moving along while we open for discussion, or we do these activities, and then we give it to them in this fun way. Otherwise, it's really hard for them. But if you think the other way is working, then do it. Okay, then do it.
Gaurapriya had hand up. Okay, I think. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you very much for a wonderful class. Mataji, thank you for your all books. Actually, we were searching for option for this modern education, and you were the first person who gave us hope that we could train our children in Krishna consciousness also and in material education also. Mataji, actually my daughter is 4.5 years old. I started actually when I started Bhagavatam with her, she actually while seeing pictures she is interested, but reading as soon as I start reading she doesn't, she runs away. Can
How
you
old
please?
is she? How old is
She's
she?
4.5.
4.5?
Yes.
Yeah, well, she can barely read right now, right? It's going to be hard for her to read right now. Otherwise, it's everybody takes turns reading the translation, and what happens is, when they are waiting for their turn, their mind becomes trapped. Like their mind doesn't go this way or that way because it's their turn to read, and they'll all love to read. And of course, so when the child is that young, I told you that you have to make it fun and creative for them, and then ask them questions, keep them alert. You see, if they're just sitting and listening, they're not going to learn. You have to keep her involved, involved in that. Now you have the Bhagavatam books. I didn't have that, so what I'm saying, so I was focusing more on just that. But now you can do the activities, and that will help her, you see, because the activities are designed in such a way that, they can be adapted for younger children, so you'll find activities that even she can do, and just to let everybody know, I mean, these cantos, as we're getting higher and higher, now we're just starting out now, canto 6, the material naturally is getting more challenging because it's assumed your child is getting older. Okay, it starts out with canto 1, which is more simpler, but then it gets harder and harder as we go on with cantos. So begin with canto 1, okay? But even canto 4 or 5, you can adapt it to a younger child.
A younger child. For younger child, we can go to the Prahlada and Dhruva, those topic directly.
No, I'm saying, no. What I'm saying is even from the guidebook, you can adapt those activities for her. Yeah, you can still do it from day 1, from chapter 1. Or you can just do Prahlada Dhruva, whatever you want. Try everything. Maybe you can start with Prahlada Dhruva and develop that attraction in her or something, and then go back to the guidebooks. Okay.
Okay, Mataji.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is don't give up. Don't give up. Maybe you're not doing it in a fun and interesting way. And that's what they need. Okay. Sometimes they need the hands-on. Sometimes they need the hands-on, You tell, there's a story summary, so it makes that chapter simple for you also. Many parents use it as their own guidebook to make things simpler, right? So what you do is you take that summary, you read that summary, it becomes simple. Then you'll be able to explain that chapter to her very simply. And then you can do some activities from that. But make sure you explain to her the essence of that chapter, the key points in that chapter that you will yourself get from the summary. Okay. So you understand what is the essence. So you can emphasize the main essence, And then through the activities, you pick out the activities that she can do. There's always some activities even a younger child can do. There's art there's art projects. For example, in the first chapter, I think they build a ship, a little boat, and where they show that it's a simple project where Sutta Goswami is the captain of the boat, captain of the ship. So, so that theme is being emphasized, that how Sutta Goswami is qualified to become the speaker. You see?
Yeah.
Because that activity emphasizes, that activity is, the idea is emphasizing the point. Okay. So it's not without a context. It's not just an art project. Okay. So you just go through that chapter. If you don't have time, at least go through the chapter in the guidebook, because that makes it easy, and then work with your child on that. Okay?
Yeah, Mataji.
Because
Thank you,
because
Mataji. Thank you very much.
first chapter is very difficult. To go through a discussion and reading with them from
Yeah.
Prabhupada's books is going to be hard for a 4-year. So that's why these guidebooks are meant to help people. Like I said, in London, they're doing it for toddlers because it becomes easier. Okay?
Oh, very well. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Radhanuga Mataji, please.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you for such a wonderful session. You could like educated us thoroughly.
Mhm.
Mataji, my question is that I'm taking English sessions in KC Shiksha. So I'm like taking both Bhagavatam Tales and NCRT book that is all over India. So what do you suggest that if we take Bhagavatam Tales as the main textbook and or both the books would be required for the main course curriculum?
Well, I don't know what NCRT is. What is NCRT?
NCRT is a standard curriculum. It's a
Yeah. Okay.
developed in India. So they have stories, but the principles of grammar and all is same, comprehension,
Yeah.
etc., which can be taught from our Bhagavatam. But main question is, whether they will be faring well in the exam, etc. But I feel just to before you answer, Mataji, actually NCRT, although we give a guideline, okay, these are the aspects to be taught. We don't need them to per se get them as a curriculum, because our exams are internal.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't need really NCRT exact the same story, but the principles we take, and that can be utilized from your book on comprehension, etc.
Yes.
Mataji, you can go ahead.
Are you going through, Prabhu, are you going through NIOS? Is that what you're going through?
NIOS, which is
I'm
basically
familiar.
NCRT syllabus.
Yeah.
The principles we can take and utilize our way of teaching,
Yeah.
and exam is anyway internal.
Yeah, because NIOS gives the greatest freedom, because it's a good system to go through for the children, because you have more flexibility in adopting the mode of education and what books and everything. And at a certain time, they would have to, like, I think it's in the 10th grade where they actually have to study CBSE or whatever you're following, isn't it? Yeah.
No, even NIOS has 10th also, 10th and 12th also.
Yeah, that's what I think. That is the first time when you have to go through all, the official curriculum, right?
Yes,
yeah, that's what I heard.
Yes.
But they do have, and that's why, but they do have an option at the 8th grade where you can give some exam or something if parents are worried and all that. But, like I said, that's why especially for your group, I showed that the 4 R's, right? Because if you're keeping that in mind, through the study of Shastra, which takes care of the language, and then the study of math, which gives them a good grounding on science, if they need to span out into science, and rote and all that, and music and all that. But if you do that, then you're kind of safe, because by the time they get to the point where they have to do outside curriculum, then they're well equipped. And that's the experience I personally went through with my children, you see. So what I'm saying is that if you followed that then you could do that. And if it's something, I don't know but if there's something that still makes everybody nervous, then obviously there's also a curriculum that you can follow. But what you said was very interesting, because that material can be covered through other ways. And you don't have to expose them to these outside curriculum so early in their life, right, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, so I would definitely, what I personally favor is this systematic study of Srimad Bhagavatam for our children. I really prefer that. After going through all these experiences, because you see how, when you go systematically, how these same concepts are repeated again and again in different cantos, right? And that, so as you gradually go through that, and that's why in Mayapur, they like their plan is to cover at least 6 cantos, you know, by the time the child is, because they started out late. My books, you know, one there from day one, right? So but the idea was, you know, because for example, if you're trying to teach them about science or creation, well, creation has been given in the first canto, second canto, third canto, at the end of the third canto, and then again in the 11th canto. You see? So by going systematically, by the time the child goes through all these cantos, he knows creation from, and everywhere it's been given from a different perspective. It's not repetition. So by the time the child goes through all these cantos, he knows, he can understand origin from every aspect, you see. That's why I became so convinced about this systematic study, and that's why I started this project. Because as I went through the chapters, Bhagavatam cantos with my children, I started realizing, but I didn't have any formal curriculum, you see. But I started realizing, oh, how important it is, because as you go forward, things are getting clearer and clearer. And then, of course, you have to adapt according to whatever is your need. You know?
So Mataji, the textbooks of Bhagavatam that you're written, authored by you, they all have grammar and all at the back, grammar exercises?
Yeah, well, no, I never taught my children any formal grammar, but that's not to say, because they were learning through language and vocabulary and all types of things, you know, communication, discussion. I got so carried away in that sense, and plus so busy in other extracurricular activities that I actually didn't teach them grammar. But they had no problem. I realized, oh, they still can speak well, they can do all that. So they didn't do any formal grammar. However, if this is too much, like too revolutionary, then what you can do is and Prabhu is running the school, so you can just, do formal grammar. And it doesn't take much to do formal grammar if this is how you all feel, because then you can do 10 minutes of grammar every day, formal grammar. You know, because the books are all available, you know. But in other words, we don't have any special activities for that, but sometimes we do. It depends. Every chapter has one language activity. We try to do it for every chapter, okay? Now, the activities that are there, they're teaching you grammar and they're teaching you language skills, you know, everywhere. And it's also teaching you writing, you see? Because it's through the activities helping you to do it, right? For example, if you have to make a mind map on the first verse, right? The first verse is an important verse of Bhagavatam. So one of the activities is you make a mind map, a center bubble with different bubbles. So that is teaching children, you know, how to, put everything in perspective, how Krishna is the absolute truth and how he's got these wonderful qualities. So how to present it comprehensively.
So Mataji, reading and writing skills both will be enhanced by reading Bhagavatam.
Oh yeah, I mean, because the activities, writing skills will be naturally will help through the guidebooks. How else can you do it, right? And everything else is, there's many writing activities there. When you have to draw a mind map and write the qualities of Krishna within those bubbles, it's writing. So children, if they don't like to write, that's my experience. So I would get my children to write through writing a play or a script. I would trick them, making a card for Krishna. So the Bhagavatam writing is like a trick, you know. All these activities, they force a child to write because it's done in a fun way. And you can always incorporate formal things. That's totally up to you all, you know. Okay.
Thank you, Mataji.
Priya Gopi Mataji, please.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you for wonderful session. So, Mataji, I am reciting in Bhaktivedanta Gurukul. So, I have two sons. One is 6-year-old and one is 4.5. So, for 4.5-year son, I started this Keshi Shiksha. It is very nice. So, the elder one, actually, I'm wife of Radhakant Prabhu. So, like elder one, in his life, like he has seen that his father is full time in Krishna consciousness. Wherever we are going only to temples. So he is attending Mangalarti, doing japa also, reciting shlokas also every day. But on Sundays, he wants like you should take me to some place. To, for example, he's interacting with the kids, other kids of BGIS. So they are telling that we visited Taj Mahal, we visited some Red Fort like that. So he wants me to take me to show him to other places also. So is it correct? This is my first question. Is it correct to show him the outside world also? And he's
Yes.
fond of like wearing good clothes. So he wants to go to some mall and just purchase clothes. Not something like wrong, but it's like I tell him to follow the things for a week nicely. And on the weekends, on Sunday, I can show you some place or I can purchase something he wants to different, because he's telling that wherever we are going only to temples. And maybe
Yes.
Prabhuji has, during my pregnancy, like Prabhuji has devoted most of his time in funding raise for this Gurukul. So he's of the mentality that I will do good job and I will give donations. I will not become a full-time like my father.
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh.
So that's okay. It's okay, because now times are changing and children are more exposed to all these attractions. Okay. So that's why we have to be very intelligent, where you don't stop them from doing that. You give always a Krishna conscious perspective to everything. The idea is to dovetail anything that the children see and exposed to in a way that's Krishna conscious. In other words, okay, he wants to go to Taj Mahal, take him. Why not? He's the seventh wonder of the world. The whole world comes to see that, right? Nothing wrong with that. But by giving him a Krishna conscious perspective, by giving him a strong foundation at home, a loving foundation. There should be a loving, unconditional love there, right? And all those things. By giving him this loving environment and this and example at home, we want to show them how everything in material life can be dovetailed to Krishna. Okay, so in other words, when he goes to see Taj Mahal, okay, there's things there that he definitely is going to wonder about, right? How
Yes.
could Aurangzeb be so cruel? Yes. How can Aurangzeb be so cruel, right, to Shah Jahan? Right? All these things come up. All these things can be discussed in your next session with him. So when he comes home, you discuss that with him. Don't say it's bad. No. You can take him anywhere, everywhere that he desires. Just always talk to him, communicate with him, and put it in a Krishna conscious perspective. Of course, there are things you don't want to do with him. Then don't do it. Put a stop there, Okay. So this way he's not feeling like deprived. Okay.
Thank you, Mataji. I'm like, he is interested in reading, listening stories and all, and he asked many questions about philosophy. But he is like fond of like maybe of wearing good clothes, to dress up nicely, like that also. So I'm trying to persuade him nicely in a loving way and to fulfill his desire. So it is not wrong, no?
No, it's not wrong. If he likes good clothes, there are some good clothes for you, but at the same time, like I said, if you do that in isolation without giving him the other side, then that's not good. You have to be sure you give him the other side, the fun way to read Bhagavatam, or some fun things to do at home. Of course, your life is very different from a usual person, normal, like the people who are living outside the Gurukula. It's very different, isn't it? So accordingly, you have to give him that leeway or the freedom accordingly, you see. And of course, his association with other boys in the Gurukula, that's also a challenging thing, right?
Because
Where
they are the day scholar only, but the other boys who are boarding are coming from different backgrounds, like and all. So, but he is with me only for the whole time. Just he's going to school for some hours.
Okay.
Otherwise, with me only.
Okay.
So, although I got very less time to sit with him, then also I'm trying, because sometimes lot of seva is there, like somebody is coming for I have to cook and give, like, then also I'm trying to give him time and speak with him. And Mataji, my second question is that, like, my elder son, he is the 4.5. So this I have started with both the kids, just telling them the stories of this. The books, they have colorful pictures now. I have not started reading with them. Just I'm telling them the stories with this colorful picture. So is it okay, or should I start reading Srimad Bhagavatam them? In BGIS, we are teaching from grade 5. We have this your books only, Srimad Bhagavatam, from first canto to 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. So they will read the 4 cantos in like grade 5 to 8. So is it okay with this small books, or directly I can start with the Srimad Bhagavatam?
So both your sons, how old are they?
One is 4.5 and one is 6.
Oh, 1 is 6, yeah. So you can see, I mean, like I just mentioned to the other Prabhu, that, there's, if you want to do the guidebooks, there's a way to do it. You would have to read in the story in a very creative and excited way, give them the, like question, discuss, like it has to be interactive, you see. And then you sit down and do a project which emphasizes that point, that philosophy. So it can be done. It's up to you how much effort, you want to put in. All you would have to do is study the chapter ahead of time in a quiet time, and then you get a good perspective. And then accordingly, you can, once you've just read the chapter in the guidebook, then you will know, okay, this is how I'm going to do it the next day. Just maybe 10, 15 minutes like that. Think about it. That's a good way. Otherwise, if you just want to read stories, it's okay, So, I mean, like both those options are there. Okay. I mean, you just have to learn how to make it interesting for them, where they're just like, wow, this was fun. They say, we did this yesterday, and we did this project, and we did this, and we made those bubbles or whatever, Okay.
Yes, they want.
But then you remind them, okay, well, remember those things, what point did it what was the point there, or something like that, so in other words, they're doing the project, but you're reminding them the essence behind it, you see. That's the whole key. So the activities are meant to make it fun for them, so they get an attraction for Bhagavatam. And once that attraction is developed deep inside, then you won't have the struggle. It's only in the beginning it's a struggle to get them into that discipline, where they actually sit down and do it with you, and they develop that attraction. Okay?
Thank you for the guidance.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I think
yes, so
great for everybody. My Mataji also, she's been patiently explaining such wonderful detail with so much patience. And Mataji is very soft, and in a very Sattva-guna, Mataji explained. It's so nice to hear, actually, those words, and they directly touch our heart. I experienced that. So wonderful, Mataji is Krishna conscious, and just by associating even a moment, it is so beneficial with Vaishnavas, as Mataji. So we are very much benefited. And to hear from you for parents, young parents, and it's a very wonderful thing because it's like coming from experience. So that's really very nice. Definitely, we are all benefited a lot. We would like to again and again hear from you, Mataji. We would like to go through, whenever you get chance, please keep us in your memory and blessings from your side. We need.
Prabhu, thank you for all your kind and generous words, but definitely what you're doing is so invaluable, giving an alternative to these parents. That I see as the greatest value. Because most parents, they would like to do it, they don't have an alternative,
Yeah.
a viable alternative. You're hitting that, group who actually have this more faith.
Yes, Mataji. Yeah, it was a need for parents because every time they would ask the same question, what should we do? So as you rightly mentioned, Gurukula is obviously, but what about those who cannot reach out to Gurukulas? Not many Gurukulas also, and Gurukulas themselves are still in a very initial stage. How they will progress and how they will evolve, it's still in a nascent state. It went through various issues. Then for girls, we don't have anything also. So somehow this came up by Krishna's mercy. And
yes, Prabhu.
that's how we
I'm
start.
always, yes, Prabhu, because definitely, because with Gurukulas, the parents also have a struggle that they may have to move there. And that takes away from their jobs and so many other. I know people constantly come to me and ask me about these struggles, what to do and all that. So because everybody wants the Gurukula, but they know that their presence is also needed there. And that requires a great adjustment, isn't it, Prabhu? Yeah.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
anytime yes. Thank you.
Thank you
No,
so
this
much.
is a wonderful job you're doing. And anytime, yeah, I'll try to make myself available. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Mataji. So thank all wonderful Vaishnavas who came, participated, listened very patiently, and very nicely. You have raised very wonderful questions. So thank you again for all of you for participating. So thank Mataji. Let us thank again by loudly chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Hare,
Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Buddha Mataji ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mother.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.